kept pushing on, but then you went too far. When your ship has sailed and all your dreams are lost, everything is wrong, you feel like it's your fault. Just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life throws lemons, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. You're stronger now than you ever been. You gotta leave now, it's time to catch the wind. You will climb up high and look through the clouds, and when you're feeling low, I know you'll bounce back. Oh, and just remember, I will be there for you, baby. Remember, there's nothing out there to get you, don't forget it. When life throws lemons, just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me. Just call on me.
For the first time in about 7 seasons, we come to a super speedway, but for the first time in Tuesday night history, we come to a completely different car. It is the Xfinity cars here at Talladega for round number 3 of the Western States Racing League. Good evening, everybody. My name is Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for making us a part of your evening alongside me, my broadcast partner, Mike Damone. Mike, first time in the Xfinity cars. We've been hyping this up for the last couple of weeks now. And for the first time since season 41 back at Daytona, we are at a super speedway here on the Tuesday night side. First time we're getting to see these guys on SRM/ESPN at a super speedway. This has the potential to be a wild, wild night.
Yeah, I mean, after the race we saw last week and the finish there, we come to Talladega in Xfinity cars. Basically two variables that we haven't seen, like you were saying, since I want to say like 2014 is what they were saying. I mean, this is just, it's going to be different, and I think it's going to be fun. We saw quite a few entertaining practice sessions there. So we'll see how that all pans out here when we go real live racing here.
Well, the practice moments are always fun and entertaining, especially when you get these guys out onto the racing surface. As we'll take a look now at the point standings coming into tonight's race. After a third place finish, Jeff Hollingsworth Still sitting atop the point standings, 4 points clear of Kyle McCartney, who finished second back at Kansas last week after that entertaining finish. Bob Beltrami jumping up a couple of spots. Ryan Steele with his poor finish down 5 spots. Javier Torres also down 5 spots. Couple of big losers here as we're starting to add more people to this championship fight.
Yeah, and one thing you don't expect to see when you tune in here to the Western States Racing League is Bentley Glaser sitting outside the top 10 after dominating both the Tuesday night and Friday night series last season.
Yeah, he is, as far as I can see, he is not here as of yet, but he has been a late arriver in a couple of the other series we broadcast. We take a look down the rest of the point standings. 30 drivers have started a race in this season 48. We've got 31 here tonight. A couple of guys that are brand new to the series set to make a debut here this evening. One of them being Kevin Becker, at least the first time I can remember seeing his name, currently 4th on the timing and scoring sheet. Donald Stewart, another first that I can remember, running in 11th. So we've got some debutantes here tonight that can make an already unknown situation even more so.
Yeah, we see, looking through the entries here, it looks like we've got 32 that are in the session right now. So we should definitely see some hard, fast racing. We see some of these guys were able to carry their paint schemes over from the truck to the Xfinity, so that'll help us a little bit when we're sitting here trying to figure out who's running where. As you're looking at Jeff Schmeier there in the 30.
Jeff Schmeier and Julian Ricci getting some drafting practice in here. Pit road entry practice. I think Ricci might want to hit the brakes a little bit harder there next time as they come down pit road. We've got about 15 seconds to go here before we do get into the session, into the qualifying portion of tonight's running. As again, a lot of guys, we're used to seeing big fields here in this series, but tonight could be is going to be a completely different animal.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, you got 2 different variables that we haven't seen in a long time. I mean, they're going to have to work on their drafting because most of the tracks we go to, it's not as imperative to find that partner you can draft with. But here at Talladega, that is something you definitely want as Earl Weaver gets ready to make his qualifying run.
That is the 46 of Earl Weaver, the first one to take the track. Wayne Hutchinson not that far behind. As we'll take a look at that 46 of Earl Weaver. David Weaver out on track as well in the 16. David Weaver was the fastest in the qualifying, in the practice session, I should say. Now, to be fair to these guys, it's not like they're complete novices at superspeedway racing. It's just that we haven't seen it in about 7 seasons here in the Western States Racing League, and not since we've been broadcasting them have they done a superspeedway race. So it's something they don't do often. However, they do run quite often at Michigan, which in the truck with the power package and the size of the racetrack, you can call that a super speedway race. Not necessarily in the most literal sense of the term, of the word, but certainly comparable to what they're going to be seeing here tonight.
Yeah, that's probably the closest that they've been for quite a while, but as we were watching them in practice, they definitely didn't get as many laps as they usually do when we're at the other tracks in the trucks. We've seen them run hundreds of laps earlier. And this one here, they barely made it to, I think the longest one was like 60 laps. So definitely something to look at and see if they were practicing during the week.
I think we had a couple of guys last week run a full race distance and a half more added on to that in the practice session last week. So it'll be interesting. So it is bigger track, different things going on, racing around other people, more likely to crash, as Earl Weaver will be the first one to set a time of 54:28 for the 46. Now, interesting here tonight is David Weaver in the 16. Again, as we mentioned, fastest in practice, goes now fifth quickest. There is a third Weaver here tonight, Josh Weaver, who currently sits at the top in the number 39 series debutante this season, 54:15 on his first lap.
Yeah, that's not going to get confusing at all with 3 Weavers running here. And Gary Johnson, another debutant here, runs a 54:24. So these guys have elected to show up in this Xfinity car, and they are showing what they can do.
Not
and
sure
the 07, I want to say, in the 07 of Keith Kellman jumped up there pretty quick as well with the 54:26. So,
looking at Gary Johnson, I'm not sure if that's meant to be an old Jeff Burton throwback, going back to the early to mid 90s there, as Josh Weaver once again resets fastest lap, only 100th of a second quicker, as Kyle McCartney beats out Josh Weaver by 100th of a second on his second lap. Stephen Bayard jumping up to fifth quickest, was third when he set the time. New pole man Charles Woods, never mind, Ross Rawlings to the top.
Yeah, Ross Rollins was actually second quickest in practice. Looked like him and David Weaver there had hooked up and ran some pretty quick laps together. So it'll be interesting to see who can get their partner with them and just draft and make their way towards the front of the field if you start halfway back or so.
Woods in the 85 you're seeing on screen right now. Slowest of qualifiers. Never mind. Jeff Hollingsworth now slowest of the 19 guys who've taken time. Hollingsworth a 54:89 on his first lap in that Coast Guard number 97.
Yeah, he's got to find that loud pedal a little quicker there if he wants to maintain his pole streak there. Was on the pole the last 2 weeks and current points leader.
Now, my anticipation with a time of that range, I would have to say he was running the outside on his first lap, trying to pick up as much momentum as he possibly could for this second lap. As he's coming down onto the apron below the yellow line through the tri-oval, completely legal, a little bit more bumpy than the actual racing surface, but completely legal. As Hollingsworth will go from 19th to P9 and 54:18 for the 97.
These guys are definitely putting it down. You know, pole position's a 54:11, and like you were saying there, top 10's a 54:19. So not too much separating first from 10th there.
See Ryan Steele on track. Now, timing and scoring does get a little bit interesting here as far as where the drivers are on the track, because the pit exit is before the start-finish line, so technically it adds another lap onto the timing and scoring, so it does get quite confusing. But I believe this is Ryan Steele's second lap. He will go 22nd quickest at a 54:80. Another guy on track, Rob Gall in the Fujifilm number 31. He is on his second lap, 54:56, 20th quickest his first time around.
Yeah, it looks like we've got a few that have not went out on track. It looks like Jeff Schmeier just decided to get going, so it looks like he jumped back to pit lane. I was going to say Jeff Schmeier, Brian Barnes, and even Kevin Becker haven't been on track yet.
Series newcomer Donald Stewart, second quickest on his second lap. Fastest of all in the second half of the lap. See what Rob Gall can do here. He'll go from 21st all the way up to 10th at a 54:17. Ryan Steele follows suit with a 54:18, putting him 13th quickest, as we see Wayne Fleet in the Folgers number 6 working his way around the track.
coming to the start-finish line here. That's the other thing that's interesting about Talladega is that start-finish line. You know, you come out of the trioval before you even get to it. Wayne Fleet, 54.31. Good enough for 21st quickest.
Seen these guys gain about 1/10.5 on that second lap. Jeff Schmeier is back out on track. Nathan Brown, Kevin Becker, Javier Torres, Brian Barnes, Dennis Fuson, Will Fletcher, and Dustin Burns have not attempted a qualifying run. Sam Johnson has, but was not able to put down a time, and unless he goes out right now, he won't be able to get one in.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to be the field, the way it's set. It is Talladega, so anything can happen, and maybe some of those guys are electing to stay in the back and let other people maybe cause a little trouble up front.
Fleet goes from 21st to 20th, pardon me. 54.25. And as Jeff Schmeier working around the track on what I would assume to be his first lap. I don't think this may not be all that well advised here, because if he's running the outside line here, assuming he's going to get a second lap, I don't think he's going to make it back to the start-finish line on a second lap. It's going to be super close.
Yeah, there's no way he's going to make it back.
Well, he's got about 5 more seconds to make it.
Yeah.
7, 56, 55. Oh, he's going to have to set a 53 if he wants to make it. It's going to be painfully close for Jeff Schmeier. Slowest of all, 25th on his first lap.
Coming down the backstretch there. 37 seconds left. 33. See if he's going to be able to make it.
Dustin Burns has gone on to pit lane, but he'll probably only get to the backstretch on the warm-up lap before the session ends. This is going to be really, really close for Schmeier. He's not just racing the clock, the stopwatch, he's racing the timer here. He's got 10 seconds to make it back to the start-finish line. Boy, it's going to be close. See what
Just
he
to
gets
the restart
here.
zone. 2, 1.
Ooh.
Oh, I don't know.
Just made
Oh, it counted it.
P9. Wow, if he would have waited another second, he would have gotten beaten by it.
Wow, that's amazing.
Incredible. So now with that, qualifying is done. We've already had our pre-race excitement, so that helps us out a little bit. And with that, we will now go to the starting grid here for tonight's race. Starting on pole with a time of 54.112, it's Ross Rawlings taking his first pole of the season with series debutant Donald Stewart, 7/1000ths of a second behind him on the front row. Charles Woods and Julian Ricci will make up row number 2, with Kyle McCartney and Paul Crumry making up row 3. Josh Weaver and Stephen Bayard in row number 4. Row 5 goes to Jeff Schmeier and Fred Williams. Rob Gall and Jeff Hollingsworth will make up row number 6. Row 7 will see Bob Beltrami and Ryan Steele. Wayne Hutchinson and Angelo Espo will make up row 8. Eric Woods and David Weaver in row 9. Row 10 goes to Earl Weaver and Gary Johnson.
Yep, and then row 11 is Wayne Fleet and Keith Kellman, James Campbell and Alan Bergen. And you go back to Barry Phil and Brian Barnes, Dennis Fuson and Javier Perez Torres, and rounding out the field is Sam Johnson.
Dustin Burns
Dustin
out.
Burns looks like he just jumped in.
Nathan
So he must have
Brown.
just...
Nathan Brown, Kevin Becker, and Will Fletcher are listed as being here. However, they did not set times in qualifying. So if everything stays the way it is right now, we will have 30 cars roll off here for round number 3 of the season. We'll take a look at the weather conditions here for today's race. about 3:15 p.m. in sim time on this day, so it's going to be a cooler one, you would think. 78-degree ambient temperature, 113-degree track temperature. Boy, the date may say January, but the track conditions certainly don't.
Definitely does not. 113 degrees. That's going to start the tires to be a little slick there.
Just a little bit, huh? See the field rolling on by. Kyle McCartney also not making the grid in the number 18, so he will start from pit lane, as well as Brown, Becker, and Fletcher.
Yeah, that's not something we haven't seen before with Kyle McCartney. Kyle McCartney, race number 1, started from the pits, wound up 3 laps down, and battled back to get, I believe he finished on the podium there, didn't he?
Yes, he did. Passed the field
So,
about 3 times over before finally getting back on the lead lap in the opening round at Dover. And if you think that racing at Talladega is difficult, especially in these Xfinity cars, you ain't seen nothing yet. Next week, we're going to be at Mid-Ohio, which is a completely different ball game as compared to Talladega.
yeah, I wonder what Bob was doing when he was looking at this schedule. You have Talladega, and then you go to Mid-Ohio. Like,
he was saying, we're having some fun in season 48. That's exactly what he was thinking.
oh, man. Well, we should be in for a good 75 laps of entertainment. There are 4 sets of tires and 3 attempts at the green-white checker.
So it should be, there's plenty of opportunity for racing here tonight at Talladega, and a field plenty big enough to put on a show. 29 drivers to take the start. 1 will be coming out of pit lane to make an even 30. Pace truck is down onto pit road. The 91 has to stay at pace speed until the restart zone. Getting set to go here. Round number 3 for the Western States Racing League Season 48. 75 laps from Talladega Superspeedway. We are green.
Ross Rollins wasted little time, gets a little bit of gap on the car behind him there, the 40 of Charles Woods, but battling back on that outside is Donald Stewart. Donald Stewart, Julian Ricci are starting to hook up a little bit there. So we'll see which line can get their cars hooked up and start to pull away.
One thing that will come into effect tonight, I am sure, is going to be the fact that all 30 of these drivers have a fast repair available to them. So you get 1 mulligan here tonight. It's no different from any other race, but it's certainly emphasized a little bit more on the Superspeedway at Talladega.
Yeah, you get 1 mulligan, you get 1 little mistake, and it is Talladega, so anything can happen. There's always a chance of the big one that changes everybody's outlook on this race, as that outside line is starting to come back towards the front again. Looks like Crumright kind of jumps out of line a little bit, so that'll slow him down just enough as we're on board here with the 03 of Stephen Baird.
Stephen Bayard, 4th car on that outside line right now, following Paul Crumright, has Bob Beltrami to his left. But you can hear just how much throttle control these guys are having to have, especially early on, not wanting to bump draft here too much, especially not wanting to run afoul of the golden rule of superspeedway racing. Don't push the pusher.
Yeah, we saw it a little bit when they were in practice. They'd get that run, and there's just not quite anywhere to go, so they kind of dive down to the inside just a little bit. The car in front of them would notice that and slide down, and that is what causes most of the accidents here when you're talking drafting at a super speedway.
Draft and aero package here, vastly different between the Cup car and the 2 lower series. The outside line is certainly the dominant line in the next-gen Cup cars. However, Donald Stewart making it work right now. He fell about 4 or 5 cars off of the race leader, Ross Rawlings, but now this last half a lap has really brought it back.
Yeah, Charles Woods was right on the back bumper of Ross Rollins there, and then he just got a little bit of gap back to the 39 there, Josh Weaver. So that allowed that outside line to get a little bit more momentum, and now he is going to probably get close to taking the lead here.
Ross Rollins becoming the first pole sitter this season to actually lead the very first lap of the race. Jeff Hollingsworth not able to do that at Dover nor at Kansas last week. Getting a very nice push from Charles Woods right now in that Purple Heart Homes number 40 on the bottom line. Josh Weaver in the 39 in that RC Cola machine running right behind him.
Yeah, you can see these guys hooked up and trying to stay in as close a line as they can to maintain that draft and that speed. And you can see as soon as they start to lose each other, the inside or outside line just starts to either fade or gets that little bit of extra boost to go towards the front. As you can see Donald Stewart there fading back a little ways.
On board with Charles Woods right now has gotten clear of that outside line, not putting too much pressure on Ross Rawlings, at least for the moment. Is Charles Woods. There's one bump, there's another little bump, peek out to get some air, and then back off coming into the corner. That's exactly how you want to bump draft, especially early on in one of these races.
Yeah, you definitely don't want to bump them at the wrong time. As you were saying, just get out, just fade back just a little bit so you don't touch them in the corner, as they're almost 3 wide back by Paul Kermery and Jeff Schmeier there, that 03.
Haven't had too many guys moving around. However, we have had one big mover. That is the guy who has the 00 on the car. Will be number 19 on your timing and scoring there up at the top. That would be Alan Bergen. While most drivers have gone up a position or two, Alan Bergen has gone up a dozen. He started 24th. He is up to 12th as Donald Stewart finally gets clear of Ross Rawlings. Up to the race lead goes to 78.
Yeah, as soon as he got clear, he jumped down right in front of him, and Ross Rollins is right on his back bumper.
Great way
One
to
of Julian
friends for
Ricci.
later on.
Yeah, Julian Ricci is now leading that outside line, trying to get Paul Kermery to get back to his bumper there.
4 on the bottom, 3 on the top right now. Only 2 cars not in this lead group. Make it 3. Kyle McCartney, Dennis Fuson, and Sam Johnson. All these guys are hooked. Well, these 2 are hooked up. Kyle McCartney and Dennis Fuson are hooked up. The 38 of Sam Johnson running solo. The other 27 drivers are all up towards the front here in this big pack.
Yeah, and once they got clear, they sorted themselves out. Now the top 5 drivers are single file. 6 now, Julian Ricci down to that bottom side as well.
Sam Johnson in the 38 that you just saw, about to be lapped in a short order, I would say. Is that 27 of Wayne Hutchinson, who's really moving around on that inside line there coming through the tri-oval.
Yeah, Wayne Hutchinson and Jeff Hollingsworth there. Both of them were kind of bouncing around a little bit. If they can get hooked up and stay in line, that will help their speed a ton. But it looks like he's still just moving around just a little bit too much to stay close to Bob Beltrami. And Hollingsworth has kind of backed off a little bit to give him a little bit of room.
Just wondering who in the world is in that 33 as you see a big swing to the bottom for the 95 of Fred Williams. That RC Cola number 33, that is driven by Angelo Espo here tonight. This is the first time that I have seen or raced against him where he has not been in that New York Jets scheme, and I guess with the Giants moving on to the divisional round, he figured, let's leave that one parked up tonight.
Like I said, most of them look like they went through and were able to get the those paint schemes they run on the trucks passed over to these Xfinity cars here. But it looks like Angelo Espo has elected not to do that.
Having on board with Espo right now. He's got a little bit of a gap, maybe 2 or 3 cars up to Paul Crumry in front of him. Julian Ricci trying to slide up into that gap. Espo says no way.
It looked like Espo was able to get a little bit of that side draft, and maybe he'll get back to Crumry there and get pulled along by the draft of that 88.
Stephen Bayard leading the outside line in the 03. The 78 of Donald Stewart leading the inside line with Ross Rawlings all over him in the 91. Paul Crumry pushing away on the back end of Bayard. In the 03, they looked like they were starting to single file out. Now the 2 lanes are starting to come back out. Another guy who's moved up quite a bit, plus 13, is that Cinnamon Toast Crunch Machine, the number 13 of James Campbell, working his way up through the field, pushing Alan Bergen on the outside.
Yeah, James Campbell had a little bit of a rough time last week and is running inside the top 10, so that has got to make him feel better here.
That's an A-pillar. Oh, that's a support beam. We didn't realize it was right in the middle of the shot. There we go. Let's take the gyro cam for a spin. Riding on board with James Campbell right now.
And you see these cars get a little bit squirrely, jumping around a little bit coming out of the corners here, but these guys are able to maintain speed, and especially with how close they're riding, especially if the difference between Ross Rollins and the leader there of Donald Stewart, Crumry and Bayard is the same way. Looks like he's trying to side draft a little bit off of Stewart there to get pulled up towards the front. Just lost a little bit of the draft there. Now he's about 3 car lengths back.
Just because the side draft does not work as well as it does in the next gen car doesn't mean that it doesn't work at all. If you can get it to go, you can certainly make some headway with a couple of cars or even by yourself, as Bayard and Crumry pretty much doing it all on their own right now, as the 33 of Espo not really engaging on that outside line, nor is Alan Bergen to the back of the 33. So outside line a little bit split right now. However, the 2 of Bayard and Crumry really working well.
Yeah, I got those two car tandems there, and they seem to be working pretty well. If you look back through on that outside line, they're all kind of spread out and got quite the gap between them. That inside line is starting to form back up a little bit, but you can see all of them back, what, five or six cars, they all just kind of spread out because they get that little bit of bigger run as Donald Stewart jumps to the outside in front of the 03 and gives the lead back to Ross Rollins there.
Interesting decision there by the 78 of Donald Stewart, unless Rawlings had the run and it looked like he was going down low, as now Bayard jumps up to the 3rd line trying to get around Donald Stewart. However, Crumry does not bite on that move, as Crumry will now just continue to be the 2nd car on that inside line. Angelo Espo doesn't leave him in. However, he does have help, as that was the 12 of Ryan Steele that was up against the wall. Bergen pinches him up. Almost 4 wide there for a moment.
Got 3 wide halfway through the field there. Running all 3 lines. 97, 13, 42, 45, 45. Oh, man. They're everywhere.
Yeah, there's a couple of cars here in this group, I will say. It's that Bucky's number 21 of Javier Perez Torres, holding to the back of Ryan Steele. However, Steele not quite to the outside of the 95 of Fred Williams. Now Williams starting to fall back a little bit. The 38 in this group is a lap down car. He's the only car 1 lap down, so he will get the free pass if a caution comes out and he's not involved in it, which, judging by where he is in the group, is not likely that the second part of that statement will come true.
Ryan still staying out there on that high line. Going to try and make that third line work as Stewart and Rollins are battling back and forth up front again.
Torres seeming content to ride that wall with Ryan Steele. Once again, a little bit of a gap forming on both lines, about 4 cars deep on both lines. The top 8 have split themselves away from the rest of the pack, but not anywhere near outside of arm's length, as Rob Gall starting to close up that inside line a little bit now in the 31. Still 3 wide here just behind them.
Alan Bergen in that center line along with the 03 there of Bayard, and then you go back and look at that outside line. Ryan Steele just passed 4 or 5 cars there. Looks like everybody had to check up just a little bit on that front side as Stewart and Krumrei jumped down to the bottom.
Middle lane sort of merges into the bottom as the 12 of Ryan Steele will take full advantage. The 13 of James Campbell jumping up to that outside line now, but that will leave Angelo Espo leading the outside line with Stephen Bayard behind him. Ryan Steele starting to work his way forward. Steele started in the 14th position, now up to 7th, the highest he's been tonight so far in the 12.
Yeah, and Torres following right behind him, up 20 positions right now into P8.
Great racing action going on as once again Steele just about into the outside wall on the back straightaway. Angelo Espo now jumping out to the lead, leaving Stephen Bayard with no help. But the high line still coming. Not as well, though, as you would have thought. Steele still leading it. Here comes pit stops.
Yeah, almost half the field comes down. Steele stays out, Torres stays out, Campbell, Wayne Fleet, Rob Gall, Bob Beltrami, Wayne Hutchinson, Gary Johnson, Brian Barnes, and Jeff Schmeier, and Earl and David Weaver as well.
Kyle McCartney and Dennis Fuson have not yet gotten to pit road. We'll see what they do here, as I believe they are both going to come in. They're both coming in quite hot. As a matter of fact, wait on a penalty for, or a possible penalty for the 18.
I would imagine.
Unsafe pit entry would be the call there if it wasn't speeding. And now here come the remaining drivers. Well, some of them at least.
A lot of them. Rob Gall, Bob Beltrami, and Wayne Hutchinson all staying out.
So these top 3 deciding to stay out. There were only about 14 cars that didn't pit on that first time around. And all but these 3 decided to come in. So these 3 trying to stretch the fuel as much as they possibly can, which fair play to them.
Well, with 75 laps in the race and we're on lap 19, we're definitely going to see a couple more pit stops.
There's the 42 of Barry Phil that those 3 just caught up to. Now, there's not much sense in defending your position to try to stay on the lead lap here if you're the 42 or the 38 because of that exact reason right there. They're coming down pit road. As there go those 3, and we will now pick up the effective race leader, merging with the second group to come into pit road. That is Ross Rawlings out in front once again, still with Josh Weaver in tow.
Yeah, Ross Rawlings, Josh Weaver, Donald Stewart, and Krumrei in the top 4 for quite a little while here. Krumrei is in a different position than he found himself in earlier, as he is now being pushed.
A lot of 2-tire or fuel-only stops there. We'll get you the pit times in a moment here, as there we see the final group coming out of pit road, as there is Paul Krumrei taking over the race lead. And we were right, there was a penalty for Kyle McCartney. whether it was speeding or unsafe pit entry, we're not quite sure. We do know there was a penalty. Dennis Fuson sitting on pit road for 33 seconds as well, so that might have been some damage repair. In that one shot that we had of him earlier, it looked as though that the rear end of the car was caved in a little bit. That might have been what he was stopped for 30 seconds for.
It looks like everybody took 2 tires or fuel only, as most of the average pit stops were about 8.5 seconds. There are a few that did take, well, it looks like David Weaver's the only one that, David Weaver and Dustin Burns, Fred Williams all took 4 tires, it looks like.
See the pit stop times, that is the time spent in their pit boxes for the top 5 right now. 7 or 8 seconds means fuel only. The 10 seconds for Bayard means 2 tires and fuel. And that has, as you tend to see here at super speedways, you get the first pit cycle in, and that tends to shrink up the one massive group into about 3 or 4 little groups. We'll find out who is in what group on the other side of this break. You're watching round number 3 action here from the Western States Racing League from Talladega Superspeedway. Paul Krumrie leading the way after the first round of stops. Back here at Talladega Superspeedway in Talladega, Alabama. Number 88, Paul Krumrie, still out in front here at Talladega Superspeedway after the first round of pit stops. The top 13 running on your screen right now. And as we had mentioned before the break, this place tends to break packs up once the pit cycle begins. There is Bob Beltrami and his group running in 14th all the way to 18th. That is Beltrami, Hutchinson, Gall, Campbell, and Earl Weaver. They are 19 seconds behind that front group. Eric Woods in the next group, another 5 or 6 cars. Boy, that was a big move down to the inside by the 52. As they are about 7 seconds behind the group that we just saw. So 3 distinctive packs here have formed at Talladega.
Yeah, it's kind of the way it goes once you hit those pit stops. Back here in this back group, they're dealing with a little bit of lap cars as well, but any car that helps you get that draft and get moving towards the front is what you need. And seeing as how everybody pitted with inside 19 laps or so, means we're in for a couple more pit stops at least. So we'll see how that all shakes out as Paul Krumrie is leading Ross Rollins.
That last group that came into pit, they are just shy of pitting on 20, 40, and 60, leaving them more than good to go to the finish plus a green-white checkered. Paul Krumrie, if we take a look, 17. Calculator out because I am not good with math. 17, which means the next lap he'd be pitting on would be about 5 laps time on lap 34. Then the next lap would take him to 51, which would mean that would be his last pit stop. Actually, no, he's going to need to take one more stop. His last stop would come around lap 68 if he were to stay on this 17 strategy.
He's going to definitely want to expand those fuel runs that he has. I'm assuming everybody probably will. The first stop was probably more of a feeling out and see where everybody else is going to go. But everybody around him is 17, so I'd assume they're going to either short pit here and try and extend this next one, or they're going to try and go, 38, 39, and hope they only have to make one more pit stop.
Talk about extending the life of the fuel tank. Paul Krumrie being in the lead this entire stint certainly does not help him in that regard. It does help everyone behind him, probably other than Stephen Bayard, who's leading the outside line right now, as they are coming up on a couple of lap cars here. I believe I saw possibly the 6 of Wayne Fleet. Yes, I did. He's also got the 78, I believe, with him as well. Oh, no, that's the 18, pardon me. I saw the 8 of Kyle McCartney going a lap down now.
And going a couple laps down. He had that speeding penalty there on pit road, so he spent almost a minute on pit road last time.
It was either a speeding penalty or an unsafe pit entry penalty. We saw him go into the grass on that pit entry. Is everyone's starting to get single file now, and as Tony would say, calling the Circle B Diecast Super Speedway races around here, that's typically the telltale sign that we're going to be seeing pit stops here soon as everyone tries to shuffle their way to the bottom.
Yeah, I'd imagine we're going to see them pretty quick, like you were saying, 17:34, so they've got to be figuring out what they're going to do with this fuel run here. I'd imagine we're going to see them stay with that 17, 18 laps and see what happens towards the end of the race, because it is Talladega and anything can happen, especially when it gets to the down and dirty race time at the end.
As the math apparently shows, if you can stretch it a couple extra laps, that could make it to where you have to stop one less time. As guys like Beltrami and Hutchinson and Gall Those are the only 3 that took it to lap 19. If they could do that again, they're going to be pitting one less time than these guys up here at the front. As we would be expecting them to come in either this time or next time if they come in again at an even number of laps that they did in the first stint.
Yeah, I'd imagine we're going to see the bottom line head to pit lane this time by. I'm assuming Ryan Steele and Jeff Schmeier will stay out another lap.
Oh, caution is out.
Ooh.
That was coming up right onto the field. That's Fred Williams in the 95. And that right there just made the last 2 or 3 minutes of conversation that we just had completely moot.
That's usually what happens.
Just as you do. Riding on board with Williams, that car barely running under its own power at the moment. We'll take a look and see what happened to the 95 of Williams. It's in turn 3. It's Alan Bergen.
Ooh.
That's the 52
of Gary
Johnson. Came down as if he didn't have any idea he was there.
Yeah, it looked like he was just right on that back bumper of Alan Bergen there and didn't even pay any attention to his inside or outside there. Just slid right down.
This is on board with Fred Williams and just plowed. It's a really hard hit.
Almost as bad as the Dallas Cowboys field goal kicker shanking those balls last night.
Well, I'm a Giants fan, so you're not going to get any. You're not going to get any Cowboy support from me. I'll be laughing right along with you. As there's Fred Williams' fast repair gone already.
Hate he had to use it so soon, but it does help him get back out on the track. He can get it fixed real quick and get back out there.
It stops coming in. Oh, Paul Crumrine not right in his box. And it looks like Josh Weaver is going to win the race off of pit road in the 39. Ross Rawlings behind him. Donald Stewart. Weaver, Rawlings, and Stewart taking fuel only.
It looks like the next 3, Hollingsworth, Crumrye, and Biard there is, looks like they all took at least 2 tires, probably 4.
Weaver and Rawlings definitely took fuel only. Weaver in the box only 5 seconds. Rawlings in for 8, just a tick under 8. Donald Stewart, 9.7 seconds in the box. Now that could be either a slow fuel-only stop for him or a very fast 2-tire stop. Hollingsworth and Crumrye, 10.5 seconds, so that was 2 tires. And then Stephen Bayard and everyone behind him, virtually everyone behind him, taking 4.
Well, that definitely puts a little shake-up into the whole fuel discussion we were having earlier, as everybody now has filled up the tanks on lap 35.
Everyone on the same fuel strategy here, so lap 34. Let's do the math here. Well, we've got not used to having this much time under caution here. We'll say they go 18 laps because that was the median of the first green flag runs. That would put pit stops at lap 53.
It's gonna be interesting.
53 and 71 as Weaver will come down to top off. Stephen Bayard to follow.
So they get in their box, they top off. they make it 20 laps on a fuel run, and they will have just enough fuel to stop one more time.
Now we're also seeing Kyle McCartney is in the same pit box, or was in the same pit box, as Josh Weaver. Now the interesting part is, if that's not his pit box, it is counting him. Oh no, it's not. Kyle McCartney has just pulled off and stopped in a random pit box. So Kyle McCartney not getting his car serviced, nor is he turning laps at the moment.
No, just sitting there on pit lane.
I think Kyle McCartney is finding out at the moment that starting from the pits here at Talladega does not yield the same success as starting from the pits at Dover.
No, definitely it does not, especially with the amount of new drivers we had show up here tonight. If he would have got a quick early caution, it might have changed the outlook of the race for him, but that did not happen. So we're sitting here with Ross Rollins and Donald Stewart back on the front row again.
Made it one full green flag pit cycle, and we were just on the verge of completing a second. We're getting into the second when the caution came out back on lap 33. No one retired just yet from this race. Kevin Becker, Nathan Brown, and Will Fletcher did not start this race, leaving just 30 drivers of the 33 that entered to take the green flag. Fred Williams is in his pit box getting service done to that car. Kyle McCartney is on pit road at the moment. Mike, why don't you take us down?
Well, here we go. Ross Rollins getting ready to make it to that Geico restart zone. That outside lane, trying to maintain pace speed with him, with Donald Stewart. And he is down and away. He got a pretty good jump this time compared to last time, but at these super speedways, you don't want to get out too far too soon, as that outside lane is going to come rushing to you here with Paul Kermerai right behind Donald Stewart. Jeff Hollingsworth closing in pretty well on Ross Rollins now.
A good jump is not something to be celebrated at a super speedway. Next week at Mid-Ohio it certainly will be, as Rawlings leading that inside line. Jeff Hollingsworth is the highest he has been tonight, pushing away on the back of the 91. Donald Stewart, though, inching further and further ahead, as Paul Kermerai with the push now instead of being out in front of the pack.
Yeah, Paul Kermerai has been one of the better pushers we've seen all night. He's basically pushed whoever is in front in the outside line and not really went anywhere. He did happen to find himself on the lead for the last few laps there, but I think he's more comfortable being right behind.
Pushed Donald Stewart to the race lead once, pushed Stephen Bayard to the race lead in the 03, got himself up to the front, so he has been one of those guys you want to watch out for. If you're behind him, you know you're going forward. Well, if you're ahead of him, I should say, you know you're going forward. Kind of suits the number, wouldn't you say?
Definitely does. And then look at our one of our biggest movers back in 10th here, Brian Barnes, up 16 positions.
Haven't spoken much about Brian Barnes at all here tonight. It's been quite a quiet evening for that number 4. As Donald Stewart leading the way here in Talladega, just barely on that outside line. You know what, why don't we jump on board with the 4, see where he is at right now. Again, as you mentioned, 10th position on that inside line. Jeff Schmeier just in front of him.
Yeah, Jeff Schmeier and Ryan Steele both were running some of the fastest laps we've seen on track, with 49.69 right before that caution came out.
Jeff Schmeier had a lot lot of entertainment even prior to the green flag coming out. If you're just joining us now, Jeff Schmeier sitting his car ninth on the grid for tonight's race after just barely beating out the qualifying buzzer. Crossed the line with zeros on the clock, but as iRacing tends to do, it takes a second or two before the session switches over into the race. Counted the time just after he crossed the line. We went into the race session, so Schmeier already beating the clock here tonight once.
Yeah, I think he's found somebody he can work with there in Ryan Steele. They got hooked up after those pit stops, and they've been moving towards the front ever since. We've seen these two drivers up front, Stewart and Rollins, back and forth depending on where they wanted to be.
I would suggest, though, for Jeff Schmeier that if I were to use my luck at some point during a race at Daytona or Talladega, qualifying would not be the place to use it, as Donald Stewart dumps down to the inside. Paul Crumry now leading the top with teammate Charles Woods pushing him.
Yeah, we saw that earlier. Donald Stewart was making that outside line work, and then all of a sudden he jumped down to the bottom in front of Ross Rollins, and they hooked up. As they have hooked up here, you can probably barely get a piece of paper between the front and rear bumper there of those two cars.
Not quite sure where this camera is going to go, but let's see. Oh, that's not a bad shot. Off of Charles Woods.
And Charles Woods been running up there inside the top six, back and forth on the top and bottom lines, trying to make that push kind of towards the front, just kind of hanging out there, see what happens.
Been a while since I made this camera pack. I couldn't quite remember where I had placed this particular one. It's that outside line with Julian Ricci pushing. Doing just fine right now. Paul Crumry still out in front of it. So we see a lot of weaving around here. Air buffeting around quite a bit. It is just beyond midday here in the sim. We are just shy of 4 p.m. in sim time. Track temperature has gone way down. Ambient temperature has stayed the same, but the track temperature when we started this race was at 114 degrees. It's gone down to 104.
Definitely cooled off a little bit here, as we see these guys bouncing around a little bit more when they were coming through that tri-oval there. That inside lane is starting to push more towards the front. You see Jeff Hollingsworth back there sliding in and out, trying to get a little bit more air on that front bumper.
Seeing the run for the race lead here. Battle for the first car not on the lead lap. There is Wayne Fleet in the 6. He is 1 lap down at the moment, currently running in the 26th position. Sam Johnson in the 38 is at the very tail end of the line. He is also 1 lap down, so the 6 and the 38 are racing each other. And then you have the 52 of Gary Johnson 2 laps down. That's Snickers Chevrolet Camaro. Kyle McCartney and Fred Williams still on pit road from that previous caution. And as we had mentioned just before we went back to green flag racing, Kevin Becker, Nathan Brown, Will Fletcher not starting this race here tonight.
Yeah, and as you were looking back through the field, it looked like they were starting to get a little bit of 3-wide racing back there.
Oh, caution's out.
As
possibly
Keith Gilman, Alan Bergen, maybe?
Might have been Gary. No, it's Gary Johnson.
Gary Johnson again.
We saw the keen-eyed viewer may have noticed on that first lap after we went back to green, he made a drastic move from the top all the way down to the bottom. At the very back of the picture, and we'll try to see what happened here. On board with Gary. About down the back stretch here, so it's going to take a second before we get to the actual incident. Getting pushed by Sam Johnson. And getting pushed around by Sam Johnson.
Remember what we said earlier? Don't bump draft in the corners?
Yeah, that might be a reason why. Now we'll try
just got that little bit of run and right in his back bumper.
See if it was net code. Nope, that was contact. So, oh, and now we're really checking up here. That was Alan Bergen. Eric Woods in the 85. Also Sam and Gary Johnson. Boy, there was something
what
else
in the
that
world?
happened. There was something that happened earlier. Here, this is everyone's in pit road now. What in the world?
What in the world was that?
Weaver? What happened to David Weaver? We're under caution. Oh, he was trying to move out of the way of Earl Weaver, I think trying to let him pass. And lines got switched.
Yeah, it looks like he was just trying to slow down to give back the position, and then...
However, that was on the other end of the racetrack with the issue with Bergen and Eric Woods. Just catching up to the back of the line. And with both Johnsons, both Sam and Gary, both running through the car in front of them. So that was entertaining.
Yeah. So
Wayne Fleet has stayed out here, and he was not a part of the caution, and he was the first car not on the lead lap. So why, oh why, he has not taken the free pass yet is a mystery to me, especially after everyone has come down to pit already.
yeah, I don't know what's going on there. Last pitted on lap 33.
And with this pit stop coming here, this would mean that everybody can make it from here on one more stop. As now the 6 of Fleet comes in. Alan Bergen was on the lead lap in the 19. I think we may have just seen Gary Johnson call it a night in the 52. David Weaver on pit road right now. Sure will be taking his fast repair. Watch for the front to pop. There it goes. So David Weaver takes a fast repair after miscommunication between himself and Earl Weaver. Weaver number 3 on the night. Josh Weaver running in 16th has seen a lot of time up at the front of this field. So we had a lot more happen there under caution than we did to actually cause the caution.
Yeah, several guys just had some severe miscommunication.
So we'll reset the field here as we get set to go back to green flag racing. Ross Rawlings won the race off of pit road, fuel only for him and for a vast majority of these drivers in this field. Jeff Hollingsworth will start to his outside. Jeff Schmeier and Ryan Steele, row 2. Row 3 goes to Donald Stewart and Paul Crumry. Bob Beltrami and Brian Barnes in row 4. Julian Ricci and Charles Woods in row number 5. So that is your top 10. All of those drivers taking fuel only under this most recent pit stop, which again will take them to one stop left here in this race, because as we found out under the caution, a 45% fuel cap on these cars here tonight.
Ace truck dives down to the inside. Ross Rollins controlling the restart once again. This time with a new dance partner in that outside line in Jeff Hollingsworth, and a new partner behind him in Jeff Schmeier. Makes his way to the Geico restart zone. See if Schmeier can stay with him. Looks like he waits till the very last second to get going. Hollingsworth got a huge jump on that outside lane, but is too far away from anybody to help him. So we'll see if he's going to be able to jump down in front of Schmeier, and he does not. So Schmeier jumps out to the outside and is going to battle here for the race lead, with Jeff Hollingsworth trying to push him now.
And that's part of the trouble of getting such a good restart on the outside line, is you're going to fall back a little bit farther. That second guy on the inside line has the advantage to move up, and Schmeier is going to go to the race lead here. So Schmeier doesn't wait until turn 3 before he goes from the second car on the inside lane on the restart to being out in front for the first time tonight.
Yeah, Schmeier wasted little time, saw his gap, and took it. Ross Rollins is going to battle back now on that outside lane, jumps up in front of Hollingsworth. Stewart down on the inside behind Schmeier there. Bob Beltrami sitting third in the inside row.
Julian Ricci really had to evade there on that inside line. About right at pit entry, Paul Crumry went to move down to the inside line, didn't realize Ricci was there. Ricci had to dive below the yellow line to avoid getting sideswiped by the 88. But right now it is Ford power. 4 of the top 5 cars running with that blue oval. Schmeier, Rawlings, Stewart, and Beltrami up in the top 5 right now. The lone bow tie in the top 5, Jeff Hollingsworth, second car on the outside line.
Yeah, Jeff Hollingsworth up 8 positions, working his way through the field. Looked like he found a dance partner with Schmeier, and Schmeier said, I'm going to go down to the inside. So now he has Ross Rollins in front of him. He just does not seem very comfortable there, sliding back and forth as Rollins goes down to the inside.
First 4 cars on that inside line, all Fords, leading the way here at Talladega on the bottom, with a line of Chevrolets, and a long one at that on the outside line, but the Fords are able to make it work. Only one official retirement, make it 2 official retirements, both Sam and Gary Johnson, after that incident that brought out the second caution, plus the extracurriculars that happened under the caution flag, have both called it quits here tonight. Fred Williams still on pit road in the number 95. Kyle McCartney back out on track, albeit about 15 laps down, but that 18 is turning laps once again.
He's going to try and get as many positions as he can with a couple of the cars retiring here. Ross Rollins is making his way towards the finish here with Schmeier pushing him. Outside lane, Ryan Steele is all over that back bumper of Hollingsworth.
2/3 of the way done here at Talladega, working lap 51 of 75. Here from the first super speedway race for this series. The last time that this series ran a super speedway race, you have to go all the way back to the fall of 2019, as we are 3 wide for the race lead. Ross Rawlings on the bottom. Steele makes it work in the middle. Hollingsworth has to settle for the 3rd spot on the middle lane.
Yeah, it looks like Hollingsworth just wasn't comfortable. Jumped out to the high side and floated back into the third position. Brian Barnes is now behind Steele. Looks like he's making his way through the field. He's up 22 positions, sitting top 4 right now.
They're both weaving, wobbling on that outside line down the back straightaway as well, both the 4 and the 97. Hollingsworth does have a friendly behind him in Charles Woods, both with OGR. Stephen Bayard there as well in that neon yellow top, number 03, the 4th car on the high side.
And these guys are seem like they're just not very comfortable. They're starting to get a little loose, a little squirrely, it seems like, when it's coming down to this races. As you can see, that outside line, just like Brian Barnes there, floating up and down and just trying to find somewhere he's comfortable, and it's just not working. It's basically like a snake on that outside lane.
UPS Toyota Supra on the outside line. It's the 07 of Keith Kellman that you saw in that third lane, the lone car out there. Now ducking in behind Barry Phil in the 42 on that high side. Rob Gall there as well, as is Earl Weaver on the outside line.
It looks like Schmeier and Rollins has settled in. Stewart just sitting back there, third on the inside row. As Schmeier jumps up in front of Steele. Steele and Schmeier have worked well together through the middle portion of this race, and now they are hooked back up, as well as Rollins and Stewart. They were on the front row when we started this race, and now they are hooked back up together on that inside lane.
Interesting to see whether or not, yep, and Schmeier will jump down in front of Ross Rawlings. So the 30 to the race lead, and leading that bottom line once again. Still 4 Fords out in front on that bottom line. Steele losing a little bit of momentum on the high side. And before we went 3 wide for the race lead there a moment ago, I was saying the last time that this series was at a super speedway, the Tuesday night series was at a super speedway, you have to go back to July 9th of 2019. Winner Brian Barnes at Daytona.
Oh, as you see, looks like Hollingsworth went from
yep,
that outside to the inside pretty quickly there. Luckily, nobody was there, so he was able to get in line. So this inside line is starting to make its way clear of that outside line. Steele and Barnes there do not have enough help to make it towards the front.
A couple of guys who were involved in that race 3 years ago, almost, I'd say 3.5 years ago. Brian Barnes winner, Bob Beltrami finished second. David Weaver coming home in 4th that night. Dennis Fuson 8th, Earl Weaver 9th, Rob Gall 10th, Wayne Hutchinson 12th, Jeffrey Schloss, I don't think Schloss is here actually tonight. Barry Phil 17th. A lot of guys that were there 3.5 years ago back here for the next super speedway race.
We're going to be coming up here on the pit window to make it to the end of the race. I'm going to assume we're going to make it all the way to lap 64 before they start hitting pit lane, but you never know who's going to elect to jump off a little bit early and see if they can make up a little bit of ground here.
Once again, last pit stops were lap 45 under that most recent caution. We're working lap 56 right now. Going off of what you were saying again, by the math, the pit window would really be open between laps 60 and 65 is when we'd be seeing these cars coming down pit road. A lot of moving down the back straightaway here still.
And when you race these super speedways, when you get towards the end of the race, that's always when your steering wheel just seems a little bit looser than it should. And you start seeing guys start weaving just a little bit more than they were earlier in the race. So we'll see how this all shakes out here at the end as Ryan Steele tries to get down and side draft a little bit to see if he can get any speed into that number 12.
So as we work closer and closer to this next pit cycle, we'll take a quick break. We will be right back. You are watching round number 3 for the Western States Racing League Season 48 here on Sim Racing Media. Jeff Schmeier and the Fords leading the way here at Talladega. Back live here at Talladega Superspeedway. We are coming up very quickly here on the pit strategy. We are in the pit window for the final time here tonight. Jeff Schmeier, Ross Rawlings, Donald Stewart, Bob Beltrami, 4 Fords, leading the way with Paul Crumry running in P5. The pack is starting to single file out on the bottom. Pit stops are imminent.
Yeah, right now, got, 12 laps to go? so everybody definitely would be able to make it on fuel. It's all a matter of who's going to blink first to hit that pit lane. And you definitely want to come down with some friends.
Biggest question is going to be, do you want to take all of the fuel to get you just to the finish, or do you want to fill it up to cover you if there's a green, white checkered or two, or possibly three?
Yeah, that's definitely going to be some strategy here. I imagine everybody's going to probably want to fill up because we can have, 3 green, white checkers, and it is Talladega. But everybody's making their way to pit lane.
Javier Perez-Torres, the first one. Oh, watch out! Oh, the 06 of the 6 of Wayne Fleet really moved that middle line, as that was Jeff Schmeier that ends up running into the back of the 6. Crumry and Hollingsworth have it coming together as well. They're still beating and banging, as there goes Bob Beltrami sideways as Hollingsworth tries to get to his box.
That has got to be the most trouble I've seen these guys get into coming to pit lane.
Period. It's the
Oh
most
my
trouble I've ever
gosh.
seen them get into, period. That was a mess of a pit entry. It's Crumry and Beltrami almost get it. Oh, and there's Hollingsworth.
Hollingsworth into the wall. What in the world is going on, guys?
And that's going to be a black flag there for Jeff Hollingsworth for an unsafe pit exit. So he's most likely going to have to come back in again here. Only 2 cars, Javier Perez-Torres and Dennis Fuson, stayed out. They are now in.
I got to say, if I'm them, if I would have noticed that pit party they had there, that was probably the better strategy, is go down when there was less traffic on pit lane.
It certainly worked out. As we'll try to take a look and see here as Jeff Schmeier with Ryan Steele getting around Stephen Bayard and Jeff Schmeier. Now these 4 are 5 seconds clear of the rest of the field, being led up by Bob Beltrami. It's a half a second between Earl Weaver in the 46 and Paul Crumry, so really that's no distance at all. And a big pack of cars there.
I want to say, not with the pack of cars that's coming.
Let's take a look and see here on pit entry. This is on board of Jeff Schmeier. See him coming in hot and heavy. Rawlings sort of pinches him. Never made contact with Wayne Fleet, though. Certainly made contact with Hollingsworth and Crumry, though, as there we see there's Beltrami sneaking his way through. Hollingsworth's got to make it to his box. My goodness, it was just a mess.
Yeah, that was insane the way that came through. And we were right with the Hollingsworth having to come back down pit lane.
And then here is what happened with Hollingsworth. We'll ride on board with him. Actually, we'll pull it out here. Hollingsworth about to leave pit road. There he goes in the number 97. That's Brian Barnes to his outside. And, oh, he just comes up across Barnes.
It looks like Barnes just stayed below that top yellow line, so he did not get that penalty.
So there's the top 4 right now running for the race win. 8 laps to go. Jeff Schmeier, Ross Rawlings, Ryan Steele, Stephen Bayard. Rawlings being left alone on that bottom line, still holding firm though. Beltrami and company running in 5th. Not quite coming. They're only coming in by about 0.2 a lap. But now as this big pack starts to get single filed out, they could be coming a lot quicker. Oh, contact. That was the 13 of Campbell spinning sideways through turn 3. Off the racing line. Somehow keeps it straight. Earl Weaver also gone and away. But off the racing line, off the racing surface, we're staying green.
Wow. That is definitely what Schmeier, Steele, and Bayard up here wanted to see, as they did not want a caution to come out with that lead that they have built up here.
These four are going to single file out to try to minimize how much gain that second pack can have. They pulled about a half a second that lap, did the second group over this lead pack. We'll take a look and see really quick while we have a second what happened there with Campbell. Well, Weaver just pinched him down. Weaver shoots back up the racetrack and then comes back down.
Yeah, just got pinched a little bit, and luckily everybody stayed off the racing surface and we stay green, at least for these front four drivers right now.
Taking a look, lap time history. This is between Jeff Schmeier up in the front and Bob Beltrami running in fifth. Half a second each of these last two laps, so they've pulled in a second over the last two circulations of this racetrack. At this rate, those guys up at the front should just barely be good to go the rest of the way with a battle just amongst themselves, especially now that we're running 2x2 here in this group.
Yeah, they jumped out and got two lines going. We'll see if that's going to help them or hurt them. They're still closing a little bit of time, but not near the time they were closing earlier.
There's two schools of thought here. One long line, while it does have a lot of horsepower, means a lot of guys checking up. Two lines means less drivers checking up, which would theoretically mean a higher speed. However, that is not helping your own cause to be running on that outside line.
No, when they were single file, they gained about a half a second. This time they gained about 0.3 of a second. So losing a little bit of time from what they were gaining earlier, but they still are closing in on that front group.
Now, it would make sense if these guys were trying to cycle through and try to find an order in which they move up to the front field, the front group a little bit quicker. However, that's not the case. These guys are genuinely battling to try to get to the front of this group and stay there. 4 laps to go. Schmeier, Steele, Bayard, and Rawlings up at the front, still line astern.
Yeah, and this group back here, oh, as they get a little bit squirrely there. That second group can see them, but it's down to about 3 seconds right now.
Jeff Hollingsworth in the middle of these two groups that could act as a bridge between groups 1 and group 2. Hollingsworth is just about latched on to the back of the top 4, as Barnes and Woods getting very close in the 4 on the bottom and the 40 on the outside. Big wiggle there out of Julian Ricci.
Yeah, Ricci got a little bit loose there, it looked like. Woods and Weaver there on that outside lane seem to be able to work together pretty well here, but they don't have enough cars hooked up, I don't believe, to close that gap any quicker than they're going. We're down to 3 laps to go and a little under 2.5 seconds between the second group and the lead pack.
They were about 0.7 of a second to the good that last time around. We'll show you the lap time history here, as this group now running the middle line. Yep, 0.75 of a second to the good the last time around. They're 2.25 seconds off. We'll see what they gain this time around. Only 0.4. Or 3.5, I should say.
So it's going to be down to these 4 to finish this race out. So you got to wonder, when do you make your move and who do you go with?
Somebody on the wall out there, I believe that was the 33 of Angelo Espo, ended up catching the wall. Brian Barnes getting to the bottom. Charles Woods now leading the line, as that's Josh Weaver leading away. This group has closed in quite a significant amount. 1.5 seconds, another 3/4 of a second down, as this front group here seems intent on running the middle lane. We're down inside of a second between the two groups. This is going to be a wild finish.
Last lap, white flag in the air. Bayard down to the inside. Schmeier and Steele to the high side. And the 97 of Hollingsworth stays down low and is going to help push that inside line. And Bayard gets turned, and Rollins is going to make his way towards the front with Hollingsworth pushing him.
Hollingsworth is not for position, but here comes the second group with a big run. Charles Woods having to catch the car coming back down the racetrack as Bob Beltrami works his way trying to get to that inside line. Again, Jeff Hollingsworth not for position. It is all Ross Rawlings right now. Contact
Woods
between Jeff Schmeier
turned.
and Woods. Beltrami gets around the 39 on the inside line, but it is going to be Ross Rawlings taking the win from the pole here at Talladega. Woo-wee.
Wow. Ross Rawlins able to get that win. Bob Beltrami comes from 3 seconds back to get second place. Ryan Steele hangs on for third, and Josh Weaver in fourth. Brian Barnes up 21 positions to round out the top 5.
And for the second consecutive week, Jeff Schmeier wrecked within the final 1,000 yards.
Yeah, he got Charles Woods just in front of him, and he had nowhere to go. He tried to stay out of the way, stay up as high as he could, and that just did not work for him.
I would be very interested. It's kind of where I wish Schmeier would have come in here or would have finished on the podium. I really would have loved to know why they were so intent on running that middle line the last 4 or 5 laps of the race, because that did nothing but help that second group start to close the gap.
Yeah, it definitely allowed them to come into play there. And the other thing is, if they would have ran that bottom line, I think they probably could have got away from Hollingsworth there, and he wouldn't have played any part of helping that line come in as well.
Take a look back here as Stephen Bayard is going to get spun off by Ross Rawlings. This second group here is going to start really coming in. See, they're starting to get the pull from the group in front. Woods tries to make a move to the outside. It's blocked off by both Steele and Schmeier. Steele gets back to the bottom quicker. Hollingsworth is going to get shuffled to the middle. Beltrami had the run, just would have been under the yellow line had he went to make the pass, so he had to back out of it. So Jeff Hollingsworth from a lap down, pushing Ross Rawlings effectively to the race win there. As we will start now with the interviews. Mike, you are with our race 3 winner.
Hey, Ross, Mike up in the booth. Got a copy?
Yes, sir. How are y'all doing?
Oh, not too bad. Heck of a run. Heck of a finish. I don't know, Frank and I were kind of sitting up here talking, wondering why you guys were just kind of staying in that middle line, trying to see what was going on as you guys were running down towards the bottom.
Yeah, I really don't know why they went up to the middle, to be honest, but I feel like if I would have went low earlier, nobody's going to go with me, and it would just slowed us down even more. So I was just trying to kind of bide my time there, and then that last lap, I dove low, and Steven kind of blocked. I gave him a shot, and it pushed him forward, and then tried to push him again down the backstretch, and I thought I hit him pretty square, but it jacked him up and turned him, so I didn't want to wreck him, but last lap, you can't lift, so it just kind of, unfortunately, is what it is.
Yeah, definitely. But heck of a run in these Xfinity cars. First time back at a super speedway in several seasons. How do you think this is going to translate to the rest of the season?
I I enjoy this car. I hadn't really ran it a whole lot. This race was a lot tamer than I thought it would be. I was honestly expecting it to just be a caution fest, which we had a few, but as far as Talladega standards go, I thought it was pretty tame. We had more green flag racing than I thought we would, so I enjoyed it. I'm glad they brought them back, so it was a fun time.
Awesome. Well, congratulations for starting on the pole and bringing home your first win of the season. Anybody you want to thank on that car tonight?
My wife for putting up with me doing this at night, dealing with the baby when he's up crying and everything. And then all my OGR teammates. I was kind of a stray cat in here by myself for a while, and Jeff and Bentley and Charlie and Fred and Paul, they all kind of took me in, so it's been fun running with them. So
awesome. Well, again, congratulations, and maybe we'll see you next week at Mid-Ohio.
Yep. We'll see y'all then. Y'all have a good night.
So that was your race winner, Ross Rawlings. We will now move to our second place finisher, Bob Beltrami. And Bob, quite an interesting run there those last couple laps. You were about 5 seconds behind with 7 or 8 to go. And on that last lap, boy, you guys came really charging through.
Well, you could sure tell that the draft played a role, eh? All of a sudden, if you'd have asked me with 3 to go, if we'd even gotten close to them, I'd have said no way. But all of a sudden, there we were, and heading into the trial. Well, I'm trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to do. I was thinking I would try splitting them, but I thought go low and just try and keep her down there in the trioval, and let's see what happens. So it worked out. I couldn't believe it.
It certainly did, and we've noted it a couple of times throughout the broadcast. The first Superspeedway race since way back in 2019 in season 41. I say it went pretty well, especially knowing that we've got one more of these coming up later on in the season.
Yeah, I think we're experimenting around with the fuel capacity on the cars, and that's certainly playing a role, breaking up the big crowds as we all have to go in, make the pit stops, do it well, and get back out. And boy, I think it's a formula that's making for some good racing. Everybody's really having to be up on the wheel and having a good time, and it sure is making for some good, clean competition.
Well, you didn't make the debut for the Xfinity car here on Tuesday nights any easier next week. You start off with a Superspeedway, and then you go to Mid-Ohio for round number 4. What are your thoughts going into the first road course race of the season at a tough track to get around?
Well, we wanted to throw everything at the drivers in these first 5 weeks,
Oh, did you?
Oh yeah. We had the mile, speedway at Dover, and here we are at Talladega, and oh boy. So yeah, Mid-Ohio. I know that tests all of us, especially those of us who are really, we're oval racers. So you get us on the twisties, and we're not exactly comfortable. So it should be, hopefully, make for some good, clean fun, and we're going to have us a good time.
Well, take what you learned from the 24 at Daytona this weekend and try to apply it as best you can. Anyone you want to thank before we let you go, bud?
I'll just give a shout out to my buddies on Dog Bear Racing. It's Brian Barnes and Rob Gall and Wayne and Ryan, and there's a whole bunch of guys who race in the league, and I'm really appreciative for those guys. So,
all right, bud. Congratulations on a second place finish, Bob Beltrami, everyone.
Thanks a lot, guys.
And Mike, that will leave you with the aforementioned Ryan Steele, your third place finisher tonight.
Hello, Ryan. Heck of a run tonight. Found yourself up in that top 4 group there, and were able to hang around and get a podium finish. What were your thoughts going into the race when you saw that it was a super speedway here?
Oh, well, my thoughts going into the race were, how much did I feel like gambling today? As you know, it's just kind of I don't know. I'm not even sure if I can come up with a good example that isn't always said by everybody else. But, anybody can kind of win this kind of race. And because everybody can win this kind of race, there's going to be usually would expect to see a lot of super aggressive moves, things that people driving over their head, that kind of thing. Didn't really see a whole heck of a lot of that. I was very surprised. I started the race and fell to the back deliberately and just sat back there for a while. And then I was like, actually, things look pretty okay. I guess I can start trying to pass people. And yeah, it stayed pretty good the whole race.
Yeah, you were able to hook up with Jeff Schmeier and make your way to the front, coming there to those final laps there. What were you thinking when you guys noticed that second group was coming in?
Honestly, because the relative only showed me the 3 cars behind me, I didn't know the second pack was coming until the guy in the 03 said it out loud, like, "Hey guys, there's a pack coming behind us. They're going to catch us." And they're like, "Oh crap." Our Jeff and I had kind of planned that I felt more comfortable running the top than the bottom. So I was like, when these guys go to pass us, I don't want to be stuck on the bottom. I want to be on top. So we moved up a lane to invite them to get next to us. But yeah, that turned out it would have been actually really bad. It was really bad, right? The last lap where we were double file and had those fast guys coming. And then we had to, I wanted to block the run coming from those guys. And then Jeff had the same idea as me. So I wound up accidentally leaving him behind as he went high. And I was like, well, now I need to block the middle. So he wound up getting shafted out of that. But, that's what comes with the territory in this kind of race. There's all sorts of wacky crap.
Definitely does. So we head from Talladega here to Mid-Ohio. So you should see who's going to be the best road course racer in these cars. How do you feel about going to a road course in the Xfinity cars?
I'm going to be sweet garbage. I'm not so much of a road course racer. And actually today, just now, these are my first laps in an Xfinity car since, I don't know, maybe like 2012 on the legacy Nationwide car. Well, it was called Nationwide at the time. So I have zero experience at all in a road course, much less anything else besides the Superspeedway tonight now. So I don't think it'll go too well for me. I think I'll be lucky if I don't crash a car. I'll put it that way. Well,
I will let you go with your top 3 finish. Anybody you want to thank tonight before we let you go?
As always, I got to thank my Dog Bear teammates, specifically Jeff, because we worked together for a good portion of the race, and Javier also helped for a good while there. And just having to figure out the fuel and tire strategy, because I didn't even turn a lap of practice, actually, before the race started, because I had some issues I needed to sort out before I got on the track. And so I didn't know at all how this race was going to go, so they were instrumental for that. And I've always got to thank you guys for covering the series. And that's about it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. And we look forward to maybe talking to you next week.
Not much chance of that, not unless everyone else wrecks. Yeah, see you then.
And so that will wrap up the interview portion for the evening. And Mike, boy, what a race we were treated to. Again, first Superspeedway race for the series in 3.5 years. First time in the Xfinity car, as far as we know, ever, on a Tuesday night at least. This was quite a wild show when we were treated to another fantastic finish.
Yeah, these guys definitely put on a show. They definitely showed what kind of drivers they are, and they will have to prove it again next week when we head to Mid-Ohio.
Yeah, absolutely. As we will now go and take a look at the results here for tonight's race. Your race winner, I should say, Ross Rawlings, coming away with his first win of the season after taking the pole here tonight. Bob Beltrami, Ryan Steele, your podium finishers. Josh Weaver on debut, the highest finishing of the debutantes here tonight. In fourth, Brian Barnes rounding out the top 5. Wayne Hutchinson, Julian Ricci, Angelo Espo, Paul Crumry, and Dustin Burns rounding out your top 10. Donald Stewart, David Weaver, Jeff Schmeier, Rob Gall, Javier Torres, your top 15, with Eric Woods, Keith Kellman, Dennis Fuson, Charles Woods, and James Campbell rounding out your top 20.
21st is Barry Phil. Alan Bergen bringing home 22nd. 23rd is a hard luck Stephen Baird. And then you have Jeff Hollingsworth, who finished the race towards the front, helping the leaders there. Earl Weaver in 25th, Wayne Fleet 26th, Kyle McCartney several laps down in 27th. Sam Johnson and Gary Johnson retired at 28th and 29th. And then go to the last gentleman to turn some laps in Fred Williams. And then, like we said earlier, William Fletcher, Kevin Becker, and Nathan Brown did not turn any laps tonight.
And so that will do it for us here for the Western States Racing League for round number 3 of the season. Round number 4 will be at the Mid-Ohio Sports Car Course in these Xfinity cars next week. For my broadcast partner, Mike DeMoney, my name is Frank Marchese. Thank you very much for making us a part of your evening, and we will see you all next week from Mid-Ohio. Good night, everybody.